Yes, I'm sorry, but all of that is totally incorrect. Everything that he mentioned about slavery and integration and all that, there's a long history of that. There was no long history of abortion.
The landmark decision that overturned Roe versus Wade.
Democrats are calling one of the darkest days in this country's history.
Every life is important, and so that's what this is about.
It's going to be a legal civil war amongst the states.
My body, my choice! We won't go back! We won't go back!
We're looking at the legal and political implications, which is why we have two lawyers with us. Eric Johnston. Titus Nichols runs his own law firm in Georgia. He also ran as a Democratic candidate for the state Senate just last month. Welcome, both of you. I also want to make it clear for our audience, we did invite female lawyers and doctors to be part of the program. Unfortunately, we didn't get them to appear in time. So it falls to you two to talk about the law. Titus Nichols, you think the Supreme Court got it wrong. Why?
I do. The Dobbs decision opens a Pandora's box of problems in regards to our privacy rights. The decision says that the decision with tying Casey as well as Roe versus Wade was not based upon history and tradition. That's a very self-serving statement from the Supreme Court, considering America has a history and tradition of slavery, history and tradition of denying women the right to vote, history and tradition of locking up Japanese Americans because we think they're spies during World War II. So to simply say that unless it's explicitly enumerated, it has to come from history and tradition, completely ignores the fact that this decision takes away a fundamental right that Americans have had for the past 50 years. And more importantly, this creates a bigger problem. Just because a state outlaws abortion doesn't mean abortions are magically going to stop. Women are going to continue to have them. The problem is if they don't have access to safe legal facilities in their own states, they're going to go to unsafe methods to accomplish the same goal.
Titus, I appreciate that the United States has some parts of their history which is deplorable, and you wouldn't wish to base a law on it. But the point is in Roe v. Wade is that they said they could base the constitutional right to have an abortion on previous laws. And according to the ruling and Eric Johnston here, it just wasn't the background, the history to support that.
And this is why I say it opens up Pandora's box, because if you're going to go down the path of, well, it's not explicitly stated in the Constitution, it doesn't explicitly state in the Constitution that schools have to be integrated. Yet Brown versus Board of Education found that it was against the Constitution to separate students based upon race. What's going to be next after abortion? You're going to have access to contraception. There's going to be same-sex marriages, which is not explicitly stated in the Constitution. By saying that you have to have an explicit mention of the Constitution, it's giving the far right in this country the opportunity to whittle away at issues that they have been against for decades.
Yes, I'm sorry, but all of that is totally incorrect. Everything that he mentioned about slavery and integration and all that, there's a long history of that. There was no long history of abortion. There are rights in the Constitution that are based on history and based on previous activities. Abortion was not one of those. It never existed as a right. And to open Pandora's box is an argument that's misleading people in the United States right now. Both Alito and Kavanaugh, who concurred in the opinion, both pointed out that this is not going to go back and change other privacy rights that have to do with same-sex marriage, contraception, or anything else. They were very specific to point that out and said the main difference here is that this deals with the potential of human life, whichever way you look at it, and it's a very different kind of thing.
That's an interesting point, isn't it, Titus? Because it's not just about the right of the woman. There is also the state's obligation to protect potential life.
That's if there was a agreement upon when life begins. And as we all know, scientifically, there is no agreement that life begins at conception. Now, again, we're not getting into morality here, but from a scientific point of view, there is no human life that is existing at the 6-week mark. And I say 6 weeks because particularly in my state, that is where the legislature has drawn the line of saying that a woman cannot receive an abortion after that point. In regards to the statements from Kavanaugh saying that this decision does not go to any other substantive right, number one, Kavanaugh testified that he believed that Roe versus Wade was established law, and you see how he went back on his opinion there. And number two, you have the concurring opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas saying, Well, the court should go back and look at other cases that have established substantive due process, such as cases dealing with same-sex marriages, access to birth control,
Eric?
and on and on and on. So to simply say that, well, the Supreme Court's just going to stick to abortion, they're not going to re-examine any other substantive right, is very naive.
The Justice Alito, in his opinion, said that the states should decide abortion laws in a democratic way. That's how society operates anyway. You try to convince your fellow citizen, and then you make a law based on that. What's wrong with it going to the states?
The problem with that is that the states select their legislature in an undemocratic manner. You see that the Supreme Court just ruled on a case regarding Louisiana's maps that they're drawn and how they're affecting minorities' ability to vote. Particularly here in Georgia and other states, including Alabama, you have an issue of gerrymandering, where the elected officials get to pick their voters and the voters don't get to pick their elected officials. So it's not as if there's going to be some statewide vote on should abortion be illegal or illegal. What's going to happen is you're going to have a particular legislature, probably a Republican, put forth a bill on the floor for the legislature to vote on. And then those legislators will vote on the law. And if the legislature is dominated by Republicans, such as in Alabama and Georgia, then what the Republicans want, their end goal, is going to become the law. It is not going to be.
Okay, well, let's look at a real life example of that. And Eric Johnston, you are part of a real life example. You drafted Alabama's new law on abortion, which came into effect as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned. And your state is no longer allowing abortions full stop. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. And that law was passed by a democratic process. I'm sorry, my worthy opponent does not agree that democracy is the proper way to answer the problems and questions that we face. It's certainly not up to judges sitting in chairs to make decisions on things that affect the people as a whole. I believe in the democratic process, but I also believe there's a constitution that keeps them in line. And that's exactly what's happened with Dobbs. And I believe we'll have probably about half the states in the U.S. will permit abortion, about half will not.
Titus, democracy in action.
So going back to your question was his law put on the ballot? He said there was a referendum that was the basis for his law. So those are two different things. And it goes back to the original problem of that our legislature is decided by a gerrymandering process. So no, it is not going to be a straight up and down vote that's going to be put before the people. It's going to be a Republicans going to put forth a bill to the legislature floor, and other Republicans who have the majority will vote in favor of that bill. It will be signed by a Republican governor, and then that will be the law for the entire state.
Okay, Eric, a rebuttal?
I think the vote of the people, they voted the elected representatives to represent them to carry out things. If you can look in California, New York, Illinois, they all have Democrat-controlled legislatures, and they pass laws to prevent abortion.
Alabama's new abortion law does not permit abortion even in cases of rape and incest, but, as Eric Johnston was saying, in order to be consistent, the circumstances should not be taken into account when trying to define if the unborn is a person and enjoys the rights of a person.
That's a position of enforcing morality onto the law. By saying that, okay, we'll allow it under this situation, but not incest and rape, you're enforcing your own sense of morality, because it is your own sense of morality that says this is a human life, even though science does not establish that. You even have Republicans who aren't sure exactly where they stand on it. Here in Georgia, you have a candidate for lieutenant governor who, before the Dobbs decision, said he wanted to completely ban abortion. But now that he sees the fallout from the Dobbs decision, he's changed his position and said that, yes, there should be exceptions. So this idea of we're going to make it a very, very narrow situation in which a woman can obtain an abortion is merely enforcing a selective set of morals onto what should be a decision between a woman and her medical provider.
Titus, can I just flip this around for a moment? And if we're going to stray into morals, we have to talk about New York. There are many people around the world who would be absolutely horrified to find out that in New York, women are permitted to have abortions right up to birth if their health, including mental health, is affected.
And that's why it goes back to it's a decision between a woman and her doctor. This is not about waving around a flag saying, oh, we love abortions, everybody should get one. That's a very tough decision that any woman has to make. The problem with these laws is, number one, it strips that right to make a decision away from a woman. And number two, it's going to put an unfair, not even unfair, a dangerous burden on those who do not have resources. Because if you live in Georgia or Alabama and your state doesn't permit abortion, you have to travel to a different state. Well, that's fine if you have the money and the resources to go to a different state, stay in a hotel, and get safe, legal medical treatment. But if you don't, you're going to be forced to seek other methods.
Eric Johnson, Titus has brought up the point about traveling. Will you and your state attempt to prohibit the travel into other states by women who are seeking abortions?
No, the women are free to go to other states, and the law specifically exempts women from prosecution. They go to another state and get an abortion, and I think there is plenty of opportunity to do that because there will be many states that allow that, and they will have many of the corporations now saying they will pay to have women go there. I think Titus argues with himself on morality. The Supreme Court itself, the liberal Supreme Court, even said after viability, the child has a right to live, and the state can make that decision. I think your observation about New York is a very good one and shows the problems with those on the other side of this issue.
Eric, we're coming towards the end of the programme. Probably a final question for both of you. Biden and others have said that this is not over, and they are pointing people towards the midterm elections. In other words, vote Democrat, and we can do something about this.
I expect that's what the game plan is going to be for the Democrats. The unfortunate hurdles of the fact that you have gerrymandering that's going to come between the voters and success and them choosing which representatives they want to speak for them in Congress and in the Senate. So yes, ideally Democrats would increase their margins within the House and in the Senate and therefore codify a woman's right to seek an abortion. However, there are many procedural hurdles that have been put in place by both the far right and conservative judges that makes that a very difficult game plan to accomplish.
Titus Nichols, Eric Johnston, thank you both for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. Till next week then, goodbye.